There are 4 buckets of practice we're looking at now. We're looking at what we might call reclaiming higher authenticity, which are the freedom, spontaneity practices. We have developing the devotional muscle in the different forms of love and devotion. That's the heart muscle practices in the different forms of heart. We have the awakening wisdom practices through both meditation, right, in all of its forms, whether that's a Tibetan analytic meditation or a kind of classical sacred text reading in the classical theistic traditions. And we have the 4th, which is, we might call it cultivating inner discernment, right, and being able to distinguish between the different selves, the false self.
The false self and the real.
The false self and some true self, or what I call a unique self, which is a different conversation. But whatever that is, that discernment within self, which is really what, Ichazo did so much incredible work on. What's your fixation? And then you develop that work. Claudio developed the work in the Enneagram, where you begin to realize that the Enneagram, is something other than what it's thought to be, and it helps you develop this discernment. And I know mentioning the Enneagram in Claudio's presence opens up huge worlds which I'm not confident to enter, so I'll just let that one slide. But we've got 4 clear buckets here that emerge, and we kind of use that as a kind of, and this is actually exciting, as a checklist. Without prescribing, we could actually say to people, okay, yo, that's you all, and that's us, okay? That if you don't have all 4 of these, some version of these 4, there's something incomplete. We can actually create a kind of good diet checklist.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
Great.
That's exciting.
So what makes everything come together? What makes you an integrator? What makes it
Effective integrator with discernment.
You said Claudio came back to integrator without me. You see that?
That's because you integrated what he's previously said so effectively.
So we created integration in the space.
I think one of my maps, one of the maps I like to present to explain my work is that we have these 3 brains, which are like 3 persons in the psyche. Superego, Freudian superego being the sick aspect of the inner father, that is more than just a critical parent, but it's the seat of ideals. The midbrain being the feeling side, the mother side, and the instinctual self being like the child. And then if you think of them as the base of as a triangle at the base of a pyramid, they all come together in the apex of a pyramid, that it's not a 4th thing, it's not a 4th part of us, but it's a space of integration. And that space of integration is like the closest you conceive it is as inner space. If you cannot integrate if you don't have inner space, and you don't have inner space if you're attached to one of the 3 parts of you. There are people who are predominantly emotional, and they're so histrionic and hysterical that they cannot take distance from emotional life. And the people who are intellectually so, and they cannot say, there is my thinking and here's me. And the same with people who are very active, who are into doing. So what we call detachment, in some sense, is a space. There are parts of us that are in us, but we normally don't have the sense of a self in whom these parts are contained. So to say space is, of course, ultimately a metaphor. You could say there is a space of synthesis in the nervous system. Some people are speaking of in prefrontal cortex in these terms, like what's his name? There's a man who was a teacher and psychiatrist and neurobiologist who wrote The Awakened Brain. Awakening Brain, was it?
I know I don't remember the name. Yeah.
He says there is a space of synthesis in the nervous system. So we have these three levels of the brain, or three brains, but there's something like a fourth brain, which is a space of synthesis, where all these nervous connections come together. And now it would be normal for this to be part of us. If we have a prefrontal cortex, that would seem to be enough. But it's not functioning that way, because our inner parts become too self-centered. Also, it's as if the emotional self, or the intellectual self, or the active self say, I am the boss here, too strongly. I think it's a complication of the hegemonic nature of society, that even our inner parts do that. We become a dysfunctional family in terms of our three inner persons. And some people are predominantly intellectual, some are predominantly active, but few people have this sense of being in a fourth realm. Now the Buddhists insist very much that all is transient, evanescent in the realm of thought, and all equally transient, evanescent in the realm of perceptions and feelings. Things go up and down, and there's pleasure and pain, but the only thing that remains is the space that contains them. So paradoxically, the nothingness is the only
kind of Ramana's "Who am I" brings that forth.
Yes.
Right. Right.
The ultimate nature. So the ultimate nature is a space of synthesis. How can be that cultivated by a practice? It's a practice of self-emptying, a practice of detachment also, non-attachment. Non-attachment, I think, is present in our worldly life in ways that are not explicitly stated as that.